Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with hope, moral lessons, and love are told. If you enjoy stories that touch your heart and inspire your soul, please make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. I never wanted anyone at Reeves Enterprises to know I could speak Mandarin. Not because I was ashamed of it, far from that, but because sometimes, in a world ruled by power and fear, showing your full colors can make you a target. My name is Mia Chun. For years, I have cleaned the towering glass halls of Reeves Enterprises, blending into the background like a ghost no one notices. I scrub floors, empty trash bins, and wipe down desks, all while carrying a secret that has haunted my family for over a decade. My father, David Chun, once walked these same halls, a talented engineer full of promise. 15 years ago, when Charles Donovan took over as CEO, everything changed. Donovan was ruthless. He didn't care who got hurt as long as his empire grew. My father was suddenly laid off, labeled as a liability to the company. Worse, Donovan blacklisted him, making it impossible for Dad to find work anywhere else. The pain and humiliation crushed him. He battled cancer while drowning in medical bills, all while the company he had loyally served turned its back on him. He died alone, broken by a system that viewed people like us as disposable. Losing Dad was devastating, but the worst was yet to come. Our family lost the home we loved. We were forced to move into a tiny, dimly lit apartment in a rough neighborhood. The nights were long and cold, filled with memories of better days. My mother, Grace, was already fragile, but a stroke left her partially paralyzed, dependent on me for everything. I became her nurse, her caregiver, her silent guardian. And all the while, I had to keep working cleaning offices, mopping floors, hiding my language skills from everyone. You see, if the wrong person discovered I spoke Mandarin fluently, they might see me as a threat or try to use it against me. I feared losing this job, the only thing keeping my mother alive with its healthcare benefits. So, I buried my talent deep inside me, like a secret treasure locked away, invisible to the world around me. Every morning, I passed the imposing Reeves Enterprises building, its glass windows reflecting the sky like a mirror to my dreams I've long stopped chasing. I know this place better than anyone, every corridor, every office, every whispered conversation. I see the executives rushing past, talking deals worth millions, never noticing the woman sweeping the floors beneath their feet. To them, I am invisible. But I see them. I see everything. Inside me burns a quiet rage, a hunger for justice. I think of Dad every day, how he deserved better, how our family was crushed by greed and cruelty. But I also know that revenge won't come easily. I've learned to be patient, to watch and wait for the right moment. At work, I keep my head low, my voice soft, and my presence smaller than a shadow. I talk only when necessary, never drawing attention. But every time I hear Mandarin spoken by visiting clients or during meetings, I feel a sharp pang inside me. The language connects me to my roots, to my father's legacy, and to the part of myself I refuse to lose. Late at night, after everyone else has left, I sometimes sit in the empty break room, clutching the jade pen my father gave me, the one thing I have left from him. The smooth stone feels warm in my hand, a silent reminder of his strength and hope. I open my worn notebooks filled with technical notes and research he left behind, hoping someday they will help me unlock the future he dreamed of. I've watched the company grow richer, while families like mine barely survive. It's a bitter pill to swallow. But deep down, I believe that one day, my chance will come. I will not be invisible forever. I owe it to Dad, to Mom, and to myself to fight back. And that day might be closer than I think. The day the contract arrived, everything shifted in ways I never expected. Reeves Enterprises had landed a massive acquisition deal with Hang Tech, a leading tech giant based in China. But there was a problem. The contract was written in Mandarin, and the company's translation team was suddenly unavailable. Panic rippled through the upper floors. The CEO, Charles Donovan, needed an accurate translation within 48 hours, or the deal could collapse. That deal was worth millions, and failure wasn't an option. The news spread quickly. They posted urgent notices, calling on freelance translators, but time was tight, and trust was tight, even tighter. Everyone assumed the company would hire outside experts. But deep inside me, a spark flickered. I knew I could do it. I understood every word, every nuance, because I had learned the language from my father and lived it silently for years. I had his old research journals, detailed with the technical terms hang tech used, laying dormant in my apartment. But saying anything meant risking everything. If my bosses found out, I'd be out on the street, and my mother would lose her health care. Still, I couldn't stand by and watch my family and others suffer layoffs hidden in the fine print of this contract. The stakes were too high. That night, I sat in my cramped apartment, the only light coming from a flickering desk lamp. I pulled out the contract scanned on my phone and the journals Dad left behind. Every mistranslation I had seen before flashed through my mind. This was more than a business deal. It was a test of trust, and someone was trying to hide something. I decided to act in the shadows. I stayed late after work, sneaking into the office when the security system was less vigilant. Using a computer in the empty translation department, I began correcting the document. I retranslated passages that seemed off, carefully balancing accuracy with technical detail. I signed the corrections, Night Owl, knowing my anonymity was my only shield. At first, no one noticed. Then the anonymous edits began circulating. The translation team was baffled by the sudden improvements, and the executives grew curious. But I remained silent, a ghost working behind the scenes. Then, the unexpected happened. Derek Marshall, the VP in charge of international relations, publicly took credit for the Night Owl corrections. I watched him smugly accept praise at meetings, oblivious to the truth. Worse, when new security protocols were introduced, I found my after-hours access revoked. My sanctuary was shrinking, and the jade pen, the only gift from my father, was missing from my locker. It felt like a warning. But what hurt most was discovering a hidden clause in the contract, one that authorized massive workforce optimization. Layoffs. Families like mine would be crushed again. I couldn't let that happen. I tried to speak up quietly, but Marshall threatened to expose my mother's expired visa status if I pushed too hard. The fear that had haunted me all these years returned with full force. I was trapped between silence and danger, invisibility and exposure. Still, the fire inside me grew stronger. I couldn't let my family's future be decided by lies and greed. I had the knowledge, the language skills, and the will to fight. But the battle ahead was more dangerous than I had ever imagined. That night, I held the jade pen tightly, vowing to reclaim what was stolen not just for me, but for everyone who had been cast aside by this ruthless machine called Reeves Enterprises. I never expected the battle to protect my family would be filled with such ruthless betrayal. Derek Marshall, the VP who had stolen credit for the Night Owl translations I labored over in secret, revealed himself as my fiercest enemy. But his anger wasn't just about stolen recognition. It was deeper, darker, a mixture of fear, greed, and desperation. Every day, I felt the walls around me closing tighter, squeezing the air out of my world. After they revoked my after-hours access, my sanctuary was gone. The quiet moments I had relied on to work unseen evaporated like smoke. I found my jade pen missing from my locker. That pen was more than just a tool. It was my lifeline to my father, a symbol of his love and knowledge. Losing it felt like losing a part of myself, as if the last thread connecting me to Dad was being severed. Marshall wasted no time turning the screws. His threats echoed in the shadows. He told me bluntly that he could report my mother's expired visa status to immigration authorities. The weight of that threat crushed me. Mom's health depended on the fragile safety net of our status here. If he acted, everything I fought for would unravel in an instant. The fear wrapped itself around me like chains, but I refused to be broken. At work, his sabotage went beyond threats. I watched helplessly as errors appeared in the translation documents, deliberate mistranslations that could sink the acquisition deal and trigger massive layoffs. These weren't mistakes. They were weapons pointed at families like mine, meant to clear the way for ruthless workforce optimization. Each altered word, each twisted phrase, was a dagger aimed straight at the heart of our community. But I was not powerless. My father's journals, worn and filled with painstaking notes, became my secret weapon. Night after night, I pored over them, comparing his detailed technical terminology with the corrupted contract. Every falsehood I found became a clue, every inconsistency a step closer to exposing Marshall's plot. One evening, While working late in the empty office, I overheard a chilling conversation. Through a thin wall, I caught Marshall boasting to a colleague about how he had inserted false data into the contract. His voice dripped with arrogance as he laughed about how no one suspected his sabotage. The sheer audacity stunned me, but it also gave me the proof I needed. The risk of confronting him was enormous. If Marshall caught me gathering evidence, the consequences would be catastrophic. Yet the thought of standing by while he destroyed my family, while he crushed the futures of so many hardworking people, was unbearable. I thought about my mother, frail and dependent, about the eviction notices and nights spent wondering if we'd lose everything again. This was the fight I was born to fight. I began collecting evidence meticulously. Screenshots, emails, document revisions. I saved everything in hidden folders on a secure drive. I even managed to record snippets of conversations where Marshall admitted his plans. But I couldn't do this alone. I sent anonymous tips to a board member who had quietly expressed concern about Marshall's ruthless tactics. It was a small flicker of hope in the darkness. Marshall, however, was no fool. He sensed the noose tightening and retaliated by increasing surveillance on me. Cameras seemed to follow my every move. Colleagues avoided me, whether out of fear or loyalty to him, leaving me isolated. The company had become a maze of traps and shadows, and I was the hunted. Despite the danger, I refused to be silenced. Each morning I returned to work with renewed determination. I reminded myself of my father's voice, the lessons he whispered in my ear about courage, integrity, and the power of knowledge. That jade pen, the smooth stone that warmed my hand, became a talisman, a source of strength I carried everywhere. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to break me. Sleepless nights, endless revisions, the weight of fear pressing down on my chest. But I held on, knowing that my fight was bigger than me. It was for my mother, for my father's memory, for every invisible worker who had been crushed under the heel of corporate greed. When the emergency board meeting was finally called, I knew my moment was near. I had prepared everything. The evidence, the counter-translation, the proof that Marshall's sabotage was deliberate. Standing there, in front of the company's most powerful people, I felt a surge of clarity. I was no longer invisible. I was the daughter of a man who had been wronged, and I was ready to reclaim justice not just for my family, but for everyone who had suffered in silence. That day, betrayal and sabotage met their match in truth and courage. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, I knew I had taken the first step toward turning the tide. The fight was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. The morning of the emergency board meeting arrived with a strange mix of dread and determination gnawing at me. I was no longer the invisible cleaning lady who kept the floors spotless while hiding her true self. Today, I was stepping into a room filled with some of the most powerful people in Reeves Enterprises. The boardroom, glossy, intimidating, and full of tension, felt like a battleground, and I was about to face my fiercest enemy, Derek Marshall, head-on. I entered the room quietly, carrying nothing but my father's old journals and a folder filled with the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. The polished mahogany table stretched out before me, surrounded by sharply dressed executives whose eyes flickered with curiosity and skepticism. Marshall sat confidently near the head, his smug smile almost daring me to challenge him. Charles Donovan, the CEO, sat silently, his piercing gaze weighing on me like a storm cloud. For a moment, I hesitated. The air was thick with doubt. I was just a cleaning lady, after all. What business did I have standing before this room? But then I thought of my mother Grace and my father David, of the years of struggle, sacrifice, and silence. This was for them. This was for every person crushed by greed and lies. I cleared my throat and began. I walked the board through the contract, pointing out the deliberate mistranslations Marshall had inserted to sabotage the deal. I showed the hidden clauses disguised as workforce optimization that threatened massive layoffs, including my own family's jobs. I presented the emails where Marshall boasted about his scheme and the altered files that carried his fingerprints. Each piece of evidence landed with weight, slowly breaking the illusion of order the board thought they had. When I laid out my father's journals, worn, annotated, filled with technical knowledge and cultural nuances, the room fell into a hush. I explained how Hang Tech's contract was intentionally complex, a test of Reeves Enterprises' ability to navigate intricate language and technology barriers. My understanding wasn't just linguistic. It was born of experience, passed down from my father's research and the sacrifices he made. Some executives exchanged surprised glances. A few whispered among themselves. The disbelief that a cleaning lady could know so much was palpable. But as I spoke, my voice grew stronger, steadier. I was no longer afraid. I was the voice of truth, armed with knowledge no one else had. Marshall tried to interrupt, to discredit me as an outsider, but the chairman of the board silenced him with a firm gesture. I watched Marshall's smug confidence falter. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. Charles Donovan leaned forward, studying me carefully. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of authority, he acknowledged my work. Ms. Chun, your expertise and dedication have prevented a critical mistake that could have cost this company dearly. We require your full assistance to finalize the translation and close the deal. Relief and a quiet sense of victory washed over me. I had stepped out of the shadows, but I wasn't done yet. I negotiated fiercely, insisting on confidentiality to protect my mother's immigration status and job security for employees vulnerable to layoffs. I demanded transparency to prevent future sabotage. Each term I pressed for was a promise not only to myself, but to the many invisible workers like me. By the meeting's end, I was offered the position of Director of International Relations, a title I never imagined I'd earn. Along with it came the return of my jade pen, the symbol of my father's legacy, and a commitment that my voice would no longer be dismissed or hidden. As I left the boardroom, a new chapter unfolded before me. I was no longer invisible. I was a force to be reckoned with, a living bridge between cultures and truths. The fight was far from over, but I had taken the first step in reclaiming not only my family's future, but the future of every silent voice within Reeves Enterprises. This was my moment, the moment where revenge, justice, and hope converged. And I was ready to lead the way. Walking out of that boardroom, my heart was pounding with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. The weight of years spent hiding my voice lifted slightly, replaced by a new and strange feeling, power. For so long, I had been invisible, an overlooked cleaning lady with a painful past and a secret talent. Now, I was Director of International Relations at Reeves Enterprises. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into a new world I'd only dared to dream about in whispers. The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and careful planning. I took back my jade pen from the executive assistant who had been holding it, the smooth stone cool in my hand once more. It was more than a pen. It was a symbol of my father's legacy, a reminder of the strength he passed down to me. Holding it gave me the courage to push forward, to fight for change not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel invisible. One of my first tasks was to negotiate better terms for the employees who would have been affected by the contract's workforce optimization clause. I fought to secure their jobs, their healthcare, and their dignity. It wasn't easy. There were powerful interests pushing for cuts and cost savings. But I held firm, reminding them of the human lives behind every number on a spreadsheet. At the same time, I worked to establish a confidentiality clause protecting my mother's immigration status. It was a personal victory, but also a powerful statement. No one would use my family's vulnerabilities as a weapon again. Reeves Enterprises agreed to reform its hiring practices, opening doors for others like me, hidden talents who had been overlooked, undervalued, and underestimated. One of the most meaningful moments came when Henry Lin, the CEO of Hang Tech, personally requested I become their cultural liaison. He recognized my unique position bridging two worlds, the corporate and the cultural, the visible and the invisible. I accepted, knowing this role could bring even greater influence and opportunity. I also founded a scholarship fund in my father's name, dedicated to supporting children from families like mine, those who face barriers but possess untapped potential. It was my way of turning pain into purpose, loss into legacy. As I look back on my journey from the cleaning closets to the boardroom, I see the transformation not just in my career, but in myself. I have learned that invisibility can be a mask, but it can also be a shield. And when the time is right, it can be shed to reveal strength, wisdom, and power. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who has ever felt unseen or unheard. It's a reminder that your past doesn't define your future. Your struggles don't limit your dreams. And sometimes, the greatest power lies hidden in the most unexpected places. So if you've been inspired by my journey, go ahead and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more stories that blend revenge, justice, and hope. Comment below what lessons you took from this story, or share your own experiences. And with courage and determination, you can turn your hidden potential into unstoppable power. Thank you for being part of this journey.